Thank you so much for being here. I'm surprised that somebody showed up. It's the last day of the conference. It's 4:47. You're after a party, tired probably. Maybe someone of you are drunk, so that's good, that's good. This won't go deeply into super gory technical details. This is just like overview of the general idea that we had when we were building the city for Dying Light 2. And there will be one video that I will play in the middle of the presentations, so we will wake up, hopefully. And there will be only 2 slides with numbers, and that's it. The rest of it, it's just like screenshots mostly, and pictures and all that nice stuff. Okay, to start with another random thought, I think that William Shakespeare was a programmer. You know this famous quote from Hamlet, to be or not to be, that is the question. I truly believe that what he meant was to stream or not to stream, that's the question, but something got messed up in translation, and we ended up with this to be or not to be phrase. But I really think that he was programming something, maybe open world streaming, and thinking about that, translators messed it up. They were not coders, obviously, so, to be or not to be. This is obviously a rhetorical question. So before we delve into the details, a little bit about me, so you know who is this weird-looking bearded dude on the stage. My name is Łukasz Łukasik, as I was elegantly introduced by my friend over here. He's not looking, but this is about him. I'm tools director at Techland, and if you're not familiar with the name tools team, what does tools team is responsible for at Techland? So basically, the short story is we are maintaining and adding new features to the editors that are used in our company. And designers and all the creative people are making games that then players can enjoy and play. My game dev journey is, well, my only corporate working career is only in game dev. I don't know the world behind game dev. So I mostly am working as a tools programmer for 19 years. I'm super old. By the way, this reminds me of the super story when I was traveling here by train. I was going to find some toilets and walking back to my seat, and I heard, the term theatrical whisper. So this is a whisper that you're whispering, but everyone else can hear it. So I'm passing by some gentlemen, and they say, look, it's panoramics. Like this druid from the Asterix and Obelix. I took it as a compliment, so yeah, I'm that, but not that old, but I'm old, you get it. So most of my career I spent as a tools programmer. I briefly started as a gameplay programmer when I was working at Towards 2 at Reality Pump. Then I had the opportunity to be part of the team that opened Krakow's studio of CD Projekt Red, and to work on Witcher 3, Wild Hunt, and both expansions, and at that time also working on tools like debugging tools, quest editors, quest debuggers. And then moving to work on Cyberpunk 2077, from the very beginning to the very end. And then my career shifted when I joined Techland to work on Dying Light 2. And my career shifted not just because I changed the companies, but also because I changed my career path, because previously, as you know, I was a tools programmer, and now I became lead of tools programmers, to then continue on my new career path to become tools director. And so you also are aware, when I joined the company, most of the things that we will be talking today were already being developed or under development. So I was not involved in some of those processes. So I'm here to give you this general idea and concept how the city in Dying Light 2 was created and how we approached open world streaming in this game. But please have mercy in questions at the end by, when you have time to ask the questions, because I'll try to do my best and answer to the best of my knowledge, but still some of them I might really don't know answer to. And also I don't want to take credit for the whole functionality here. I won't say names because, you know, when you start saying thanks with names, then someone will pop up and, hey, you forgot me, you know? So to avoid that confusion, I wanted to say huge kudos and congrats to core engine team, people who are involved in creation of those mechanics and functionalities, also tools team at that time who was working on it. So open world streaming. What is it? You know, different companies and different people understand it in a different ways. So let's define it. So we have to ask ourselves and answer 3 simple questions. First, how do we load assets? Second, how do we unload them? And third thing, how do we execute transitions? So the players are not disrupted. We are not breaking their immersion. They can enjoy the game, wander around, run around the world, and they don't notice moments when we are loading something and unloading. But then you can ask a question, why do we even need to load something from drive to the memory and then figure out when we want to unload something from the memory? Well, the world would be a beautiful place when we could just load the whole world of the game into the memory. Players will be happy. We as the developers will be happy. Everything works, right? Well, no. We have hard limits that are kind of given to us by hardware, by previous generation consoles, new consoles, you know. So there are some limitations and we need to comply with them. So we are not able to load everything and keep everything in the memory. So we need some ways to stream our world so we can load only parts of this world and unload things that are not longer needed for the players. Then later on, we'll go through LOD switching. LOD meaning level of detail. I'll explain that later. And how we make those transitions unnoticeable for players. Then we'll also go through LOD creation, how we create them and what are they. And yeah, before that, let's talk about the world that we created for Dying Light 2. So World of Dying Light 2. Actually, we had 2 maps in game. We still have. It's like prologue, but this is small map used only for the initial phase when you're starting playing the game. And this map didn't pose any technical difficulties or strain on memory, so we are not focusing on the prologue today, and we'll be discussing city, so the big main map of the game. So, our world. We have dense urban environment. It's basically a city. It's packed with content. You have thieves on rooftops, hordes of infected roaming the streets, so you better look out. And there are lots of parkour possibilities. You can grab onto walls, climb on them, jump on them, slide on the rooftops, do all this crazy stuff, use paraglider, which we will also discuss later. That will be a funny thing. For some funny, for some not. For programmers not. We have 5 playable regions. And this is important for us, people from technical team, because in terms of memory and optimization, we needed somehow to divide the world, partition the world into separate, distinct regions. Players may be not aware that there are 5 distinct regions there because we are blending discretely between them. So yeah, but for us it was 5 playable regions. The idea is that they are all different. They have different characteristics. So we have Old Villador, which is characterized by low architecture, lots of vegetation, lots of green areas, low verticality, mostly small buildings. So you can think of it as a friendly place to live in, like if you don't mind infected roaming around, you know. But yeah, this is a friendly neighborhood. Then on the other hand, you have Central Loop, and you can see this region from Old Villador. And design is completely different, as you see. It's super modern, skyscrapers, lots of verticality, metal and glass elements in huge numbers. There is Cathedral Island. This is another region. different vibe than two previous ones. Lots of sacred buildings, churches, chapels, also kind of green area, low buildings, low architecture with sloped rooftops. There's also abandoned electric car factory in the middle of chemical wasteland, beautiful place to visit. And there is a sunken district. It can also be accessed in-game. All those regions can be accessed in-game. This one can be uncovered based on choices you make in the game as a player. But yeah, this area can also be accessed. On top of that, you can roam this big city, and there are also accessible interiors. So whenever you're on the map, you can also visit most interiors. So you can go inside to do your quests, to search for loot. You know, any hardcore RPG collectors here? If you are, you can raise your hand. Yeah, some of, yeah. I know your type. This is my type too. I like to, you know, gather all kind of junk laying around on levels, and then my inventory is constantly full. So yeah, I get you. So yeah, you can go into those interiors, and you are not bothered by loading screens because everything happens on the same map basically. So there's no loading and no breaking immersion for players. The game is also played from a player's perspective. It's first-person perspective. So we needed to pay attention also to high detail, because as a player you can approach from really close some things, and you want to see all those beautiful details. So you cannot see this blurry, low-quality meshes and textures. And this is, for example, entrance to the canteen in Central Loop called Fisheye. And the structure and the world is structured and created by a city builder, but this is the topic for another separate presentation, or maybe series of presentations, because it's huge. It has lots of functionalities and features. But so you know at least a glimpse how it works and how it looks like. It's basically looking like this. So it's looking like, you can think of it like a 2D planner. And this 2D planner was used to semi-procedurally generate our map. And to just briefly explain it to you, you divide our map into road segments, crossroads. There are areas filled with buildings. And there are also some unique locations that we place in some places of the map. So those unique locations are placed between those locations. So yeah, before we go to the problem definitions, and we had lots of problems, now it's the time to put this still images into motion. So I have prepared, courtesy of lovely people in my company, but now the tricky part, I'll try to, is a spacebar running video in VLC?
You're that pilgrim that came to town recently. Our situation got fucked up. All these people will be dead by the end of the month. I want to ask you for help.
I thought I'd be scraping your guts off the fucking pavement. You owe me one.
On behalf of all its whores, bandits, and idiots, I christen you a citizen of Villador.
Please stop.
We have to walk past them.
They're everywhere.
What the fuck? Plan B. Run like hell.
We have a plan. Fuck the plan. We don't know what's up there. Our fate rests in your hands.
I'm just trying to stop the madness.
this city really worth you losing everything?
Yep, that stopped suddenly. Sorry for that. Yeah, so basically, this is the world of our game. So let's get back to the definition of our problem. So there are a couple of problems for us as developers. As I mentioned before, we cannot load everything into the memory and be happy. We need to decide when to load things and when to unload things. So we have to fit in memory, and GPU and CPU pose constraints for us. Time frame cannot exceed 33 milliseconds. So we also have prefabs, meshes, and textures that use memory. So this is constant demand, and we need to constantly juggle those things, which are loaded, which are unloaded, and when. Render items stress the GPU. We get to render items later. This is a term that we use in our engine, in C engine. And you don't think of them as render calls, but you can treat them like single instances of meshes that are being rendered. So this is to simplify the rendering process. And there are logical objects that, on the other hand, stress the CPU. And why? Because logical objects need to be updated in each frame. Those are basically all kinds of items that players are interacting with while playing the game. And as we mentioned before, we need to make transitions unnoticeable for players so they don't see those popping of items, you know, low quality, high quality, loading of buildings, meshes, etc., etc. Objects to simplify in game. I know this is the last day of conference. I mentioned there will be one video. Check, we crossed that. So yeah, mission accomplished. And I said that there will be only 2 slides with numbers. This is first of them, and we'll be done with numbers. So those are our numbers, like basically how much data, different data we had. So basically 12,000 megabytes of mesh memory, 4 gigabytes streamed textures. That's a lot. 150 megabytes prefab memory, just a little bit number, 1 million of render items, and 700,000 logical objects. So not that bad, right? Okay. So now those are our numbers. So let's confront them with, well, the platform. So what we can afford. Spoiler alert, not much. So we have 60 megabytes for meshes. So as you can see, we exceeded it only twice here. So this is going to be great. 1,200 megabytes for textures, and we have 4 gigabytes total. Great. 50 megabytes for prefabs, exceeded 3 times. 12,000 render items, this is an average number, because some render items can be bigger, some of them can be smaller, you know, so they are not the same size. Size doesn't matter. Well, sometimes it does. Okay, never mind, scratch that. And so 12K render items, we have 1 million total, and 50,000 logical objects, and we have 700,000. So a little bit bigger. So, as you know, bigger games take time to produce. So the development usually lasts multiple years. And we started with some initial approach. And of course, as years went by, the design changed, the requirements changed. So we needed to tweak our technology to figure out ways how to handle new situations that were initially not planned. And now I'm reminding myself there was this commercial, I don't know for which company, but there's someone sitting in the airplane reading newspaper, and paper is like flapping around like something is pulling wind on the newspaper. And camera moves out, and you see that the plane is not completed yet, but it's flying in the air. And you see some people like constructing the plane as it's already flying. So basically, this is how games are made. This is pretty accurate. So basically, we are making technology, and with use of this technology, all the creative people, all the designers, creators are creating the game. and then they are giving us new information about new features they want to implement, then we need to adjust our tools and systems to kind of make that happen. And this is kind of back and forth going on and on. So yeah, we are kind of building plane while we are on it, flying already. So the initial approach usually tends to change later in the development. So our initial approach was, okay, we need to tackle memory issue. So we need to partition our world. We need to slice our city into separate regions. Okay, sounds simple so far. Okay. So as I said before, the map was divided into 5 playable regions, distinct. And designers created those partitions. They figure out, okay, how we divide the city into those regions. Great. Those red borders that you see are the borders of those regions. And you may ask, okay, you can see a player representation here and where he's looking at. This is from the editor. And you might wonder, okay, but this player wants to travel to another region. What happens now? So there are also things called buffer zones. So they are neighboring zones to each of those regions. Important thing for designers that they should use the most generic items possible there, generic objects, because if player is, for example, in this middle region, then in memory, what is loaded is this region and also all those surrounding buffer zones. Why? Because we don't know where player will travel, so we need to have them loaded. And on top of that, we are having another layer with information, those gray, tiny gray lines you can see. Those are region switch borders. So those are basically places, when you cross them, the actual loading of next region starts. And unloading the previous region that you are currently leaving is starting. So, sounds simple, right? Okay. What can go wrong, right? We agreed on something with designers. You know, they are respecting the decisions we came to, the conclusions. Okay. So, nothing can go wrong, right? Sure. So, let's say you are a player and you are fighting with zombies in region A or doing whatever, collecting junk on level. I don't judge, I do the same thing. And you're traveling to region B. So you are going from region A to region B. Then you are entering the buffer zone. So you cannot basically travel between regions without going into buffer zones. So we are going into this buffer zone and you are approaching this blue line, so this region switch border. And then we are starting loading region B. And at this moment, we are unloading region A. Player is leaving it. Okay, so far so good. But now, how to make it happen that if player is here in the region B, it's already ready for him, it's already loaded. So, there was some decision made regarding speed of player. And technical teams, engine teams figured out, okay, let's decide that we need to load region in under 10 seconds. So, based on that, we can design those buffer zones in a way that player can safely travel from this blue line to the region to the border of region B, and everything is loaded on time. Right? Okay. So everyone will stick to those decisions, right? Design decisions. And we are good to go, right? Okay. Then you might ask another question. Okay, haha, I gotcha here. What if player changes his mind and he wants to go back to A? Oh, I left some junk there. I need to go there to collect some crap. Okay, so the same mechanism happened. He's crossing the blue line. We are canceling loading of region B, unloading this stuff, and the loading of region A starts. Player has 10 seconds to get there. Boom, we are there. Everything's loaded. Everything is working. Okay. So we have those regions that we are loading, right? Okay. So regions are not empty. They contain some data. They contain meshes, and meshes, to simplify things, is just geometry of everything that you can see in this region. Everything that we used in this region, Geometry of it, meshes. Okay. We have prefabs, which you can think of like descriptors of hierarchies of objects that we use. So we can combine different things into bigger prefab and then combine this into bigger prefab and so on. And we have geometry data bundles, which are basically, this is something specific to C engine. Those are structures that we use to optimize rendering of our meshes. Okay, so when we enter region, we need to spawn objects, but it's not like we are entering region and everything spawns and everything is up and ready and going, you know? We have a system for that called spawners. So the role of spawners, basically 3 tasks for them. First, create objects that are near player, obviously, you know? I'm approaching the stand, you know, I'm close to this spawner, boom, it spawns because I'm close to it. If I'm far away, you know, oh, I see something interesting here, you know, oh, some fan here, I have fans. So this spawner decides, oh, it's time to unload because the player is far away from me. But then also, I need to replace scene hierarchy with LOD, so with simplified version of myself. If player is far away and he cannot see me, right? Okay. And also, spawners also are responsible for spawning and despawning different types of our geometries. And we have 4 categories for those geometries. Exterior, exterior detail, interior, and interior detail. So basically from the biggest, from the largest noticeable elements to the smallest. So from the big picture to the details. So for example, if player is approaching this building, so first is exterior, first biggest thing that he sees, so walls. You can see it marked as this green overlay. Then he approaches even closer, then you see some new elements popping up, marked by blue overlay. Then when he, and this is exterior detail, then he approaches even closer, there's those yellow overlays, meaning this is interior, and he's going even closer to the inside, and there's interior detail, all those red overlays. So, as I said, when you enter a region, it's not like everything is loaded, because we don't have this much memory. So, we have a structure, spawn hierarchy. So we enter regions, they are spawning logical areas. This is still nothing. And logical areas are spawning buildings, and buildings are spawning building layers. That's it. This is how it works. So, as I mentioned, if the game is created during many years of development, some things change. So, at some point, the decision was made to ditch the buildings layer in hierarchy to simplify things, because there were way too many LODs generated for this buildings level and way too many generated prefabs. So to save time and performance, we ditched the buildings layer from this hierarchy. So we can understand it better. This is a picture of a region. Then we are getting closer to one logical singular area. Then, as we move even closer, this is, let's say, building level, which we ditched, so it's not there in final product. There's no building level, but yeah, this is what was previously building level that we omitted. And then we go to the last layer, which is building layers. And keeping in mind that our game has this old parkour crazy functionalities that you can jump onto different wall parts and climb on them, you know, run on them, we need to have some standard, you know, of heights and how the buildings are created, you know, so player can grasp and reach something to hold on to. So basically we are making buildings from those slices, like you are making a sandwich, basically. First story, second story, rooftop. Okay. But now, how do we spawn things? And when do we spawn them? How spawner knows that it should, you know, load something? So around the player, there's a radius, 72 meters. And all of those spawners have their extents. So think of them like bounding box, AABB bounding box. And if as soon as this circle touches some spawner, the spawner is a spawning object. And as soon as we move further away and we leave some spawner, the spawner is unloading the high-quality, big, heavy object and replacing it with level of detail version. So simpler object. And how do we create LODs? This process was not fully automated. For LOD 1, you can see like high-quality version of this canopy on the left side. It might be built from couple meshes. But artists would create proxies for things like that. So you can see simpler version, lightweight version, and this is only one mesh. So it's way lighter than a canopy on the left side. And sometimes those LODs are called proxies or proxy meshes. And for this, we didn't use any middleware. So basically, artists created proxies, proxy meshes for objects like this. And then when we had generation of the city and baking of the city, all spawners gathered all those proxy meshes into one and created one combined mesh with all those LOD switching possibility. And also during baking it, there was also baked, we baked a texture on top of it. So artists were not bothered with also doing that. And so it was semi-automatic. There is also something called horizon. So when you look around as a player, you can see some things far away, right? So this is horizon. Or you can call it region LOD. So this is LOD 2. And how we created that? So basically artists took the city in a version with LOD 1s, exported this to FBX file, then imported in 3D Studio Max, for example, and nuked the geometry even more, decimated, so it's even simpler, more lightweight. It's still looking okay, but it's as tiny as possible. Why? Because, as you can see, it's constantly loaded. No matter where you are as a player, you are looking around and you must see the horizon, right? So it's always loaded. So that's why it needs to be as lightweight as possible. Terrain, for example, also behaves in a kind of similar way. If you are leaving some region, we are replacing terrain, this property terrain, with simpler geometrical representation without collisions. And when we are replacing those LODs, so for example, this is a spawner. This stand is a spawner. Now I'm looking like a really panoramics, like crazy wizard. Okay, this is a spawner. And it's far away. I'm approaching, okay, 72 meters, it's starting spawning. But it cannot replace on my eyes representation, so it disappears and now loads this high quality object, right? So we use something like temporal dissolve. So basically, I'm approaching it, and we're starting loading high quality object of the stand. And as it is loaded on the background, we start displaying some parts of it that are already loaded, some pixels from this high quality object. And this transition phase is like half a second, maybe 1 second. So players even don't notice it, but it's like dissolving one into another. And as soon as this high quality LOD0 is loaded, when I'm close to it, we are switching to this full quality object. And the same happens if I wander around, you know, go away. I'm 72 meters away from the spawner, and then boom, the same happens. We are dissolving into lower quality object because we are far away, so we don't care. We cannot see it from far away. I mentioned tiny objects in the beginning. This is a dedicated system that we have in CNGene that we mostly use for small objects like small vegetation, debris that's laying around to make environments more real. And to save memory, they have no collision. They have super simple geometry because, for example, they are from some small rocks that are lying around or some small vegetation, small plants. So there's no collision, it's super simple geometry. There's low placement precision because we are not placing them on level anywhere. We are just using 2D density maps to describe how dense this vegetation should appear. And then when player is running around, we are doing this real-time geometry tracing and seeding. So we are seeding those tiny objects as the player is running around. So they are not there, they are not on the level during the design. So for example, have this rooftop. You don't see any vegetation, well, some of the vegetation, but you don't see more vegetation here. But if the player approaches this place, then suddenly you can see this grass, these small plants appear, like rocks, debris of all kinds. So basically, this is seeded runtime as players go, to save some memory, of course. We are not keeping it forever. It's despawned as soon as player leaves this area. There are also characters roaming our game. And the same goes for them, because character meshes also occupy lots of place in memory. So the same system is kind of working for them. Not the same spawning system as for different objects, but it's a separate system. So for example, if we want to spawn an AI character that will wander around, so first we are spawning it in this super simple version. So this is like super simple dude almost without any geometry, just like a sticky figure, just with some shader magic so we can display it. And in the background, we are loading mesh, the final mesh, this high quality mesh. And as soon as this load is finished, then we are replacing this poor dude, this clay figure, with detailed version of character. And same happens, vice versa. When you are moving far away, whatever, they are wandering around, you can see them from far away, but they are then also replaced back to these poor stickman figures. You see them from far away that they are walking around, but you don't need to see the details on them, because they are far away. So, as I said before, if you discuss with designers and agree on some, requirements, that we have some time before we travel from one region to another, that maybe we should have some controlled points where player can travel from one region to another, so we can react accordingly with the engine and loading, so we are on time, right? And if everyone respects those things, we are done. Well, we had some slight issues. Spawning region borders. We'll get to that in the next slide. We can get to it right now. The problem was that players can get too close to LOD. How does this happen? We talk with designers, so what the hell? There was a plan that there was this toxic, like rivers or something, that would block players from going in all places, and we just have some special choke points, like bridges or some tunnels that you can use to traverse between regions, right? But then designers, and this is, of course, I'm maybe joking right now, but this is true. This is their job. Their job is to create as pleasant world as possible for you to play. So their idea was, okay, why to post such limitations on player? Let them go here to the next region, We don't have any bridge here, we don't have any tunnel here, why to block players? And I agree in that matter. But the problem happens that players were able to travel to the boundaries of next region and see buildings in this poor form, because we didn't manage to load it on time. So we figured, okay, we need to mark some first line of buildings in this region and have them in higher quality and put them into LOD of this region. So from far away, you don't see this ugly version, you see this more high quality version. But the rest of buildings further away are in this poor version. So that solved this problem. Another problems were that we had some unique locations that were super important for the story perspective, like canteen or other places, peacekeepers, ship, metro station. And they were super heavy with resources, but the problem was they were only used in those places. So we needed to kind of figure out a way of how to isolate those places. So we are not loading anything except those things that are needed only here in those locations. Okay. And non-uniform load distribution. It was, for example, some spawners, some objects were way bigger than other objects. Peacekeeper ship, for example, or metro station. They were super big. So if player just approached it from one side, boom, it got loaded. So it was kind of tricky thing to design things around it. So we figured this thing, okay, that first line of buildings will be in this higher quality. So players always will see nice objects. But then designers had another great idea. And it's also a good idea, but it also made a challenge for the technical teams. We had paraglider in our game. So you remember that rule before I said, you know, we have 10 seconds that will take a player to go from this border to another region, right? 10 seconds. Now you can fly using paraglider, and it's way quicker than 10 seconds. You can get there, you know, before the poor engine finishes loading everything for you, okay? And on top of that, the speed of paraglider is a parameter that you can upgrade and level up to make it even faster. So, yeah. So, in some, not many places, but in some places on older consoles, there were blockers like those screens, like please wait, because we physically were not able to finish loading something if someone maxed out the speed of paraglider and was going full speed using paraglider, then, you know, we didn't finish loading on time. But there were like very little number of those instances. So yeah, we basically went through this slide. And what we learned, some of those things will be obvious. And, but it's good to list those things, like a post-mortem that you do after finishing projects. So you know what went right, and most importantly, you know what went wrong. So you remember this analogy of being on a plane and flying in the air and building the plane as you are flying? So basically, it's difficult to design a system without data. The best case scenario would be that we have already this city, and now we can figure out how to slice it, how to, you know, manage the speed of player, loading, unloading, and it would work great. But it's not the reality, you know. We are creating the city as we go, then we are adjusting our technology to handle the city that we created, and so on and so forth. Worlds should be created with hard constraints in mind, and also guidelines for designers and artists needs to be enforced. I know that on the one hand, we have creative people, which job is to be creative and create those amazing environments. But on the other hand, the technology teams need to have some boundaries, you know, technical boundaries, like limits of how fast we can load something or unload something, you know, so we can hide those things from players. So this is constant struggle between those teams. HDD in old generation consoles are a real pain, especially if you are loading lots of smaller files, for example. If before we loaded textures from separate files, then we switched to bigger files that contain, you know, more textures, so we can have less reads from the drive. But basically, HDD is a pain. And so we are not finishing on like depressive note, like, oh, this is all so hard and difficult, you know, and it's all bad. It's all great, because, you know, if it was easy, where's the fun, you know? So when respecting constraints, open world streaming can work quite well with this solution that we have proposed for our game. You know, it may not work for all games that you want to create, but it works for the specifically world that we created for our game, because there are no like golden solutions that work for everything. And as we are here at DevGAMM conference, also thinking a little bit about the future, you know, what can we do, how can we improve some processes, you know, what lessons did we learn right now, what can we do differently. So just 3 bullet points, like they're all connected kind of. AI support, this is trendy word like AI. Oh, whoa, you are using AI. That's cool, Yeah, but AI support. We have internal team, separate team, Techland, who helps us with AI research, and we also spoke with our users. I mean, developers that are using different editors, like Word editor, Story editor, Quest editor, Dialogues, whatever, and ask them, hey, do you have some ideas how we can improve your workflows to make it faster, quicker, so you spend less time doing some things and simpler? So more automations that we can provide. Something is taking long. So we can improve times of iteration, because if you are editing CT, then you need to wait for this baking and generation process. It's not instant, you have to wait for it, and it takes time. Each iteration takes time, and you are waiting and waiting. So this is also something that we can improve in future. And I think that's it. Thank you very much for staying so long. I think lots of you stayed with us here today. So thank you very much again to listen to this crazy-looking bearded dude. I see that we have some time for questions, but yeah. Yeah, please keep in mind that I might not know something, so yeah.
So just raise your hand.
Ah, damn it, I was hoping for no questions, but okay. Let's try this out.
Not today. Thanks for the talk. I played Dying Light a long time ago, so not sure, but I'm pretty sure that you have in game some kind of binocular, right? The tool to zoom, and how you, because in most cases, I mean, as I remember, you can check some horizon, some far away elements. So how you handle those?
Unfortunately, I was not working on that, but I know that there is some specific mode in-game that's turned on when player uses binoculars, because this is like corner case. Usually you cannot see that far, but then when you use binoculars, you're like almost standing there. So you need to somehow load the area where you are looking at. But this is my guess, how this might be solved. So this is kind of like faking that the player is there. So those spawners react and spawn things, and you see them in bigger detail. But again, this is my guess of how I would approach it by using existing systems. But this answer might not be precise, because I'm not the owner of that system. So yeah, but this is my guess. If I would implement such feature, I think I would go that road. And if you exit from this mode, we need to despawn the area that you are kind of scouting. So yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But it was a good one.
So as far as I understand, in your engine you're trying to keep one big piece of one big region at the time, and only load it and switch to another one when it's necessary. As far as I know, common approach to streaming is to divide into some grid and so on. And I wonder, why didn't you consider such approach? Maybe you did, and why have you go with that?
Yeah, manual creation instead of using like fixed grid and then load them. I know that there were some considerations for doing that, but I was not there when the decision was made. But from what I heard is that this approach with those regions that designers had to kind of draw themselves, so the shapes are completely different, this gave designers more flexibility of saying that, oh, this weird shape we need here because we are using similar types of assets there. So we can decide like, oh, this is like weird looking region, but we are using like, for example, this low architecture buildings there, so we can have them all in one place. And maybe that was the decision. So to help combine those similar assets, so when we load them, we are keeping in memory all those similar looking assets, instead of like when you have fixed grid, you might have some things here and parts of different kinds of assets loaded as well. So I'm guessing this is for memory optimization and flexibility for designers. Best guess. Thank you. Thank you very much.